Science is the playground of the mind, the place where students discover things about their environment, their companions, and themselves. Larry Malone. Welcome back to It's Time for Science. This episode, I talk with Leonor Rebosura from the Newark Unified School District and Kimberly Astle from the Washington State Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. And we also remember FOSS co-director Larry Malone. Leonor Rebosura, the Director of Teacher Induction at Newark Unified School District in Newark, California, talks with us about how to get families involved with science. Ms. Rebosura touches on science resources for home, events that teachers and districts can do to get parents involved, and the difference that parental involvement makes in helping kids learn. Kimberly Astle, who we spoke with at the NSTA conference in Atlanta back in March of 2023, is the Associate Director of Elementary Science and Integration for the Washington State Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. Ms. Astle spoke to us about funding for getting kids outside, their statewide project of integrating science, ELA, and math, as well as teacher burnout, getting the joy and fun back into science. We also spend a few minutes remembering Lawrence Edward Malone, who passed away on June 13th, 2023. Larry was passionate about science education and spent over 50 years working at the Lawrence Hall of Science in Berkeley, California. He provided the vision for the full option science system, FOSS. Join us as we take a few minutes to remember Larry and his legacy. Well, I'm here talking with Leonor Rebosura, who is the Program Director of Teacher Induction at the Newark Unified School District in Newark, California. I believe you've been there for over 14 years now. Is that correct?
With this particular district, I am actually beginning my 26th year.
Wow, that's amazing.
I am on starting my 34th year in education.
Wow, so you started when you were 2 or 3 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done, well done.
Previously, I actually started my career in San Francisco Unified.
Oh, wow. So I want to talk to you about your role as Director of Teacher Induction. It's a wonderful title, and I think it's great what you guys do. Can you tell me what your description of your job? What does your job entail?
Oh, actually, the Teacher Induction is a commission and teacher credentialing approved program to help teachers with the preliminary teaching credential clear their credential. So I work with the first and second year teachers of the district. I designed a program that helps them meet their requirements. So at the end of those 2 years, working with a mentor, they get the clear teaching credential.
Excellent.
And on this side, I actually have to be the program administrator for science as well, which allows me opportunities to work with all the teachers in our district, including the new teachers for the new science teachers.
Are there any specific needs that when you approach the science teachers, since that's our main audience, is how do you help them? How do they adjust to being a new teacher? Is there anything specific about science that you give them a hand with?
Very good question. Newark Unified has a system where we have science resource teachers in the elementary schools, and we have 6 of those. They're prep teachers, right? Most of them, like we have 4 this year, 3 of them have been with the district at least 5 years, some of them more than that. And they basically teach the science, teach with FOSS throughout the 6 elementary schools. So when I, as a teacher induction director, I support the science resource teachers, but not to get their teaching credential, because most of them do. We do have a new one this year who is in the intern program, I believe. So we provide her with support, right? One of the things that as the teacher induction director, I'm very well versed in is mentoring. So make sure that they are matched with someone who could support them in all aspects of teaching, not just curriculum, but giving them an additional shoulder to cry on, maybe someone to bounce ideas off, someone to share resources with. And one of the things that we know is that we really need to be a community to be able to support our new teachers. And in elementary or middle school and the high school, that's kind of like the environment that we try to provide any of our new teachers, whether they're new to teaching or they're new to the district.
There's a question I was going to, you pretty much answered it, but I know that a big subject, especially in the last few years with the pandemic, is teacher burnout
Right.
and feeling like they're alone, and it's a very very difficult thing. So obviously, you can reach out to your district and to get this sort of support is must be
Mhm.
more important than ever, probably
Right.
I would assume in your career.
Right. We're a small district, so we have the capacity to really be more personal.
Hmm.
Our principals are very attuned to what our new teachers need. We actually had as one of our science resource teachers wrote up like a simple how to support your SRT,
Hmm.
like a simple guide of the basic things that they would need when they come and join Newark for the first time, because it is a different teaching environment and system. They're basically, say, a teacher at one of our K2 class, at our K2 class, she's there twice a week. She's teaching first and second grade, right? It's multiple classes in one day. So that could be very challenging to someone who doesn't know the system. So we try to provide that support by partnering up with the other SRTs, or we do our monthly meetings. And I check in as often as I can.
Well, that's wonderful. They must feel very supported, which is super important in this time, especially these days. I feel.
I think it works out that there is one administrator, at least one, right? We're a small district, so we don't really have a whole lot, and we're all
Mm,
wearing different hats. One administrator that's focused on them.
yeah.
And we make sure that they have like dedicated time with us. At the same time, we've established a relationship wherein they feel comfortable just emailing or texting me or calling me up when there's a big concern that they can't handle.
Do you feel anecdotally? I'm just interested in this. My wife works as a school manager of the office,
Mhm.
and talk a lot about teachers with their burnout. But especially since the pandemic, do you feel it's much worse than it ever has been? How do you feel the levels of teacher burnout? It feels to me anecdotally that it's been pretty intense the last couple of years.
There's so much ambiguity. This is, I think, the first year that we didn't have any COVID protocols
Hmm.
like drop off and pick up at the day, or parents being in the classroom. Now we have parents, the parents can actually come in and volunteer. But even just the last 2 years after we came back, there was just so much in instability, because teachers would be out because they're sick, or they're tested positive. So then, and we don't have a lot of subs or guest teachers to take over. So every day, um, I actually, even as the district office personnel, so once the principals go through the regular subs, and maybe we don't have the subs or the guest teachers as we call them here, they would reach out to us. So it was every day we'd get the text from a principal. I go, we need you here at the district. We need you here, and it could be like a half day. It could be one period, it
Hmm.
could be all day, but they would also have to figure out like who's available, so people would cover each other. And that caused a lot of additional anxiety,
Hmm.
because you have to prep for your own class, and then you have to go into another class who you may or may not know. And
Yeah.
like I would sometimes I didn't care to know which class I would have to go into, because it would lessen the anxiety if I found out that I'm going into a kindergarten class.
Hmm.
I'd rather not know until I get there, right? I'd rather not know, because there's nothing I can do. I will have to be in that class. So I
Yeah.
better it's best that I just show up and I'm like, oh, you're in kindergarten. I'm like, no time to panic and just do what needs to be done. You know?
That's great. Sometimes you just got to jump right in. I love that.
Yeah.
One of the main questions we always like to ask our guests in general, sort of a philosophy of the podcast in general, is why is science education itself important, especially in the elementary world? Why should kids be learning science? Why is it important?
Especially with the new focus on phenomena, understanding what's going on out there, having them really observe things that are outside. One of the things that Newark has been focusing on the last 2 years, is environmental literacy and computational thinking, right? So our STEAM initiative has to do with that. But more importantly, it's like we just need to get our students aware of the world around them, and be able to interact with that world. whether it's to think critically about their impact on their world, garbage, recycling, how to keep their garden beautiful, how to be involved in planting, a garden, being how to be responsible human beings outside their world, just so that they know that their world is much bigger than just the classroom. Science gives you the opportunity to do that. And we also discovered like our science research teachers really teach with FOSS because it has everything that they need, from the academic content in the books to the investigations, which are very hands on. And last year, I actually, because I'm also trying to figure out how do you link this to computational thinking, which is the basis for coding and programming, which we also feel and we know our kids need, and it's also part of our STAR initiative. Um, I found a lot of a lot of lessons in our FOSS curricula that really lends itself beautifully into critically thinking about our world. Particular was the fifth grade lesson on the kelp forest and the marine marine biology and the marine ecosystem. And it's also more fun. It's more fun.
Yeah.
You can tie it to real world, becomes more fun. It Once you learn these things, you learn how to think critically, which is something they need. We won't ever be able to provide them with all the facts that will help them in the future, but we can help them with the skills to find those facts and critically think about those facts.
That's excellent. Which one thing is I love about science is that it's very real world, very very concrete, as opposed to an abstract idea. It's like it's literally outside your door, and so kids can go out there and do that. Which actually brings us to kind of another main topic for today, which is the importance of science education outside the school, especially in the home, getting families and caregivers involved. I wanted you to weigh in a little bit about that. How important is that? And then maybe some tips and strategies. How do we get, because kids come from all different backgrounds and different types of families, but how important is it to get the family and the home involved, and how do you do that?
It's very important, one, because then I've seen how some of the activities we've done in Newark to involve our families, because that's actually one of the components of our environmental literacy plan, community and family engagement. So we have, during the time of the pandemic when we couldn't have parents in, we had one school really focus on that that initiative, the environmental literacy initiative, and understood what it's like to take your kids out, the lessons. We have FOSS Outdoors, which we used. At the end of that year, culmination was a family science day. We couldn't bring our parents in, so we took them to the park next door. We brought in and we invited different organizations like Coyote Hills Regional Park and Alameda County Water District, Mosquito Abatement, Mineral and Gems Society, Don Edwards, right? And they and then our teachers also brought out science stations, different science stations. They decided which one it would be, but it gave the parents an opportunity to interact with with their own kids in a different way. They also got to see what their students can do, because we see our kids as kids, right, in the at home, and they're but you don't. It gives them a different perspective of what their students can really do. One of the things that we also did was we walked over to Down Edwards, which was very close to the school, and they learned about what's available in that park, like so they can come back and enjoy the park with their students. Um, we also have had in one of our elementary schools, they have like a walk gallery walk. So we bring the parents, we invite the parents for like half an hour. The kids are the docents to their activities, and it can be anywhere. At the last one, it was anywhere from art that was related to science, or some coding programming activity that they did in code.org, or it could have been like writing and science and math project, literally, like a project based. But the kids were the docents. When their parents came, they were able to tell the parents and their caregivers or their families what they did.
Hmm.
Again, it helps the parents know, one, what the students can do. Two, it then brings them into the world of their students or their kids. At the same time, hopefully, what we're also hoping is that they'll know how to supplement, complement the experiences here. So they like, oh, you were learning about this coding thing, right? Maybe we could do a little bit. Tell me more about that. Maybe you can teach me how to do that. Or they were learning about trees and plants, so they can take them to the park, right? Again, knowing about your kids get you closer to them.
Hmm.
It's an into their world. It also bonds them together because the kids are so excited to tell the parents what they learned.
I was going to say that's probably one of the biggest aspects of it.
Yes.
I have two kids; they're older now, but yeah, they love telling you what's the world is like. Once they
Mhm.
find something out, all they want to do is tell you about it. So
Mhm.
it must be very exciting for them to be able to do this, especially with
Right.
science. So many things and outdoors and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So in general, it's benefit. Do you see a benefit for the kids when after they've done this, an increase in maybe in grades or in terms of enthusiasm or anything like that? I mean, how the importance of getting the families involved, does it have a real tangible effect?
I think that's almost a given because the emotional support that the kids get really bring confidence to them. Just highlights confidence. It gives them a little bit more assurance at doing so. Yes, I think it's a data. We don't really have direct data about that, but you can just see it in the way that they talk about their things.
Hmm.
The hugs at the end of those gallery walks. I get that's the one thing nice is I'm invited to to the gallery walks, and when I can, I do. And just the pride that the students have when they're able to talk. Now, unfortunately, there are some kids whose parents will not be able to come.
Right.
So what they do is they assign those kids, knowing that that usually the teachers know, they assign the kids to the guests. So those could be the school board members. In this particular, the school board members, administrators, and district people, other teachers. So they still get the chance to feel that pride in their work, right?
Right. It's excellent. Does your district or your educators have any sort of strategies to sustain engagement with science inside or outside of school? I mean, that's essentially, I think, what you've been talking about, but
Mhm.
very specifically, like resources for parents to go online to get things that they can maybe read or download. What kind of strategies do you have to help your educators?
Um, our science research teachers are really good about like sharing stuff with their parents. They also share with the teachers because they co-teach science, right? Well, we've always been able to provide them with, I guess it's called ThinkLink now,
Hmm.
with the
Yes.
resources.
Hmm.
And then oftentimes, they could be given like an activity to take home, something to do. So that also gets the parents involved. In the middle school, I know that there are parent resources that they share. Um, it's a different program, but there's always that parent home connection component.
Excellent. So, to teachers listening to this, I mean, hopefully districts everywhere have someone like you, or at least the enthusiasm for helping out. But if they need to reach out, do you suggest, like, if they don't have that, if they don't have what you do, what can teachers do to suggest to their district? We need this help. We have to reach out. Are they to form a position like yours, or just to make sure that the district is helping them as best they can?
Um, Teachers have the strongest voice. If they find the need, then they should advocate for themselves. Now, that could also, if with budgets and everything, finding a person may or may not be, but they could definitely talk to their principals about maybe rescheduling the collaboration time to be focused on science.
Hmm.
Maybe PD could be focused on science. Maybe they advocate for an opportunity for them to really look at data. Now we have cast scores. Look at data just like we would do ELA and math, and find ways that the collaboration time, the grade level planning time could be focused on the data that the cast scores show. And then all of those, anyway, the teaching strategies for ELA and math and science are very similar. And that's kind of like how we're able to sustain science, because the reading strategies you need, and I'm talking about elementary and possibly even middle school, reading strategies you need to understand ELA books, literature, fiction, nonfiction, would be the same as reading the nonfiction books of science. So that's where, and oftentimes we encourage our teachers, if you're going to be teaching nonfiction conventions, for example, or nonfiction materials, use science as the content.
I think that's one of those things that has come up many times now is the need to that science can cover all subjects. It
Oh,
can
yes.
cover art and English and math. You can
Yes.
work with
Yes.
those teachers, social science and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. Science is like the umbrella over all those things.
Yes, it could
So
be. We've been able to organize actually the district-wide PD day, like a whole day, focused on the FOSS kit for grade level. But during the pandemic, when social emotional learning was a focus, we were able to integrate, like, how does science support this? How does it support ELD? How does it support math? How does it support English? Or how does it integrate? So we use the content of the FOSS kits to be able to teach the other subject area. So then they don't see it as an individual subject. Rather, it can actually support all the other subjects.
that's excellent. Well, Leonora, this has been really, really interesting. I thank you so much for your time, and it's amazing what you do for teachers, the support you provide, and I just want to thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity to share, and I hope I was able to help someone.
That's our goal.
So my name is Kimberly Astle, and I have a great job. I work for the Washington State Office of Education, and I am the Associate Director for Elementary Science and Content Integration for our state.
You are like the guest to have on this podcast. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
My
This is
pleasure. Thank you.
great. So generally speaking, what is your role?
So my role is pretty varied. So I can provide support to teachers and districts. We can create guidance. We can work to influence policy. We can work with our legislators, work with the other content specialists at the state agency. So really, it's like a multifaceted role, and it's really great.
Did you come from a teaching background? What's your background in terms of science and all of that?
Yeah, so I actually taught elementary myself for almost 20 years. I did not come from a science background. I actually started teaching with more of a literacy lens and really came to science over the years, learned on my own, and just came to realize what a wonderful area it is for students, student engagement, and also for bringing in all the content areas.
We've had this conversation a few times now, and I love it. You're like the perfect person for that job, because we've been talking a lot about elementary teachers who may not feel comfortable teaching science because they come from a literacy background. So how do you help facilitate that for teachers? How do you make them confident?
Right. So I found like a really valuable and powerful way to help teachers realize that science is great, it's fun, that they can do it, is to give them hands-on experiences themselves as a learner, so they can see this is what it feels like when we're asked questions, when we're trying to figure stuff out, when we're manipulating things, when we're talking with others. Then they feel the power of learning in that way, and they're like, I want to teach that way, right? And so then that next part is, now that they're excited about it, providing professional learning and supports, like, what are the practices that we use in our classroom? Like, what are the materials we need? What materials are out there? What lesson resources and so forth? So it's really kind of multifaceted. It's helping teachers see, I can do this. And really part of it is, you do not need to know everything about science. You need to know this one sentence. How can we figure out, right? Because then it's you and the class together figuring things out. It's not me spouting information. We're figuring things out together. So it really is very freeing.
I think I can see science being very intimidating. When you say that just the term science, you're like, oh my God, I have to be Einstein to know all of this of it, but that's not the case. Really, I love and what I love about science is that's the core of it, is just exploration and data and learning, and it's wonderful. What are your goals for the state? Do you have specific things that you're working on right now?
We do. So our vision for our state is that just like all states, there's huge variation in what students experience in elementary. Some students really have lots of time on science and are really getting that rich experience in K-5. Some students get a little bit of science, and we know we even have some students who don't have any access right now. Our vision is that all students in our state get to learn science in K-5, so they're prepared as they go on to middle, they see themselves as scientists and engineers, and they just have those rich experiences.
And Washington State, obviously beautiful outdoors, so integrating getting outside and using that as your part of your classroom, I'm sure that must be part of the whole thing as well.
Yeah, actually our state has a whole initiative to support outdoor learning and environmental science. So we have funding to support getting our classes outside, getting them on field trips outside, even multiple day experiences learning outside for environmental science. So we support that a lot in our state.
Now, this might be an administrative question. Can teachers approach you and ask for that money, or is that the kind of thing that's going to districts? I mean, how does that get down to the the root level?
Right. So right now we're focusing mainly on 5th and 6th grade. We want to get all 5th and 6th grade students outside, and then we are growing that funding over time that we then want to get all of our students. And we even are bringing our high school students to come work as mentors with those younger students. So we're trying to think about it as a system and how we can over time get all students outside.
A topic that comes up a lot is that sometimes learning is very much in silos. Like we're going to teach English, we're going to teach math. How do you integrate science? Because science is one of those things that really does go across all disciplines. I grew up as an artist, as a cartoonist, and the times I got to work on a project as an artist, I learned so much. And so how do you integrate science across all of those things?
Right. Well, that's why science is such a special content area. Because in science, we apply all the other subject areas, right? We need to read, write, speak, and listen in the context of figuring something out in science or solving a problem. We use applied mathematics, right? We're measuring, we're graphing, we're calculating, we're comparing. We may very well use art as well. We may be representing things visually or graphically. We might be videotaping. We might be doing like modeling with our bodies or movement. And of course, social studies comes in as well as we're thinking about human impacts and community problems. So science is amazing because it really is that anchor that gives that real world context that all of the content areas can come together.
I can speak from experience that if you have a graph or a chart, ask the art student to do it, because that's the greatest thing in the world, is bringing information to visual life. I love doing that. So. Well, we could talk a little bit about how important are materials. I mean, places, companies like FOSS, they provide the materials, and science is such a material thing. You need certain things to do experiments. So how important is that to get to the teachers, to give them the materials they need?
Yeah, so I'm in year 2 of this statewide project on integrating science, ELA, and math. And so I've had the pleasure of really hearing from many teachers across our state, many leaders at all levels. And so we're just hearing the importance of what are we going to use to do this integration, right? We need to think about, what do we have ELA curriculum that we can integrate with? What's our science curriculum? Does our science curriculum already have built-in integration, or do we need to go look for opportunities? So materials we've seen has been a really important part of not only supporting all our elementary teachers, but also helping them think about integration and putting those together. We think it would be so wonderful if our developers of content could all come together and think about aligning things a little bit more. If our ELA content could be line up the grade level science content, like that would be fantastic and would really support students having a more coherent experience.
I've always felt it's great when teachers within a school work together too. The English teacher works with the science and the math, and that sort of bringing cross disciplines together. Is that part of your plan as well?
So in Washington State, often it's one teacher who's teaching all content areas in elementary. We do have some places where there's a science specialist. Again, it's even if I'm a teacher doing this by myself, what tools do I have to support me, right, in putting that puzzle together?
Yeah, and understanding that they all go together.
Yeah,
it's not a
exactly.
separate thing as they go, right? Is there, another thing, Washington being a wonderful outdoor state, but are there differences between like the urban areas and the more rural areas in terms of how science is taught? How do you approach that when you have such disparate groups, really?
Yeah, Washington has a lot of variation. We have very large urban cities like Seattle, but we also have many very, very small, tiny rural districts. And what we've seen is that there's kind of just differences in equity, right? Our smaller districts might not have any science content specialists to support them. They might not have the funding to purchase like really high quality instructional materials or those hands-on pieces. So we're really trying to think about equity in our state and how can we try and help all of our teachers and districts get access. So one of the things we do is we know that many districts are able to purchase these already developed materials, but we also try to work towards OERs as well, just so there's a variety of different materials people know about.
I think one of the interviews we had yesterday, one of the teachers said that it's very important to reach out and ask for help. And I think it's great that, you can go to your district, but you can also go to the state level and actually approach you with concerns and things like that. Is there a process for that, for teachers to reach out to you in Washington?
Yeah, I love it when teachers reach out. And we're fortunate in our state that we also have regional science coordinators. So they can go to their district, they can go to their regional science coordinator, and then they can also come to us at the state. So we have our emails that are published on our site. And then this project that I'm doing right now, I've loved having that direct contact right with teachers so I can hear what are the needs in our state, like what do our instructional leaders need. So just trying to get out there and connect.
And 20 years in the trenches is huge for you. I mean, that's awesome. So you have a very good idea of what's actually happening out there. So if other districts approach you, how do you work integration in? I mean, what is your definition of what integration should be, and how do they actually enact that?
Well, the great thing about integration is there is no one right way, right? So I think the answer is different for everyone. We've been working directly with instructional leaders for 2 years to help them work through this process. So we say, what are the assets that you already have in your district? What curriculum do you have? What expertise do you have? One of the things that comes forward is they often need to really look hard at their instructional schedule. Do you have time scheduled for science? Where do you have ELA time that you can also utilize for science reading time and science writing time, right? So that instructional schedule has been a piece that districts really need to work with. And then again, looking at how can we align, or maybe we can just shift the time that we're teaching this science unit so it really lines up with our informational reading or writing unit. So, and again, because all our districts are unique and special as far as what curriculum they're using and what their scheduling is like, the answer is different for everyone. But I think it starts with what are the assets we have, right? How can we look at just simple things like schedule shifts and maybe even changing timing for units, just as pretty easy entry points, and then just growing expertise.
I was going to say, every time I learn more about this, I think just the vast difference in districts and cities and schools, it must be amazing. It must be very difficult to keep track of all these things. And
that's been the biggest aha for me, because I know my own experience, but just seeing how different it is if you're in a very tiny rural district where you are the only third grade teacher, right?
Right. Very different world for that
as
person.
compared to very large districts. So a lot of variation.
And one more. I was thinking a subject that seems to come up a bit now is teacher burnout after COVID, after that kind of thing. There just seems to be a trend towards, there's so much pressure on teachers to get right back to normal, everything's fine, all that kind of stuff. Is that something you're experiencing up there? And how are you trying to make sure that you're still getting new teachers coming in, still be excited? And how do you re-energize current ones who might be a little overworked, let's say?
Yeah, definitely acknowledging this has been a very, very, very hard few years for teachers. Teachers had to work so hard and really trying to do things in ways that are completely new to them, right? So it's been a very tiring time for teachers. So one of the things that we're helping people think about is that science is one area that can just bring joy and happiness and excitement and energy into the classroom, not only for students, but for teachers too. And so we've talked to people about how science and content integration can really bring forward social emotional learning, right? And just this joy of discovery with your students, getting outside, all these things that we can do that can help our health, our mental health, just trying to get the joy back in teaching rather than kind of this kind of grind that is kind of happened with trying to catch back up with reading and math, right? Like let's get the joy back in teaching and think about teaching students all content.
Well, it's funny. The more I get into this, the more I realize how important that is for science, especially. You can go outside, you can do those things, and get the kids re-energized as opposed to sitting there all day doing one thing. Science is this great opportunity to explore the world, look at the clouds. What a great thing for the kids to then go back to the next class and do something else. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, science, when done right, is super exciting. It's
super exciting.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes,
well, Kimberly, again, thank you so much for your time. This has been quite the honor. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
On June 13th, 2023, our friend and colleague Lawrence Edward Malone passed away. Larry served as the FOSS project co-director for over 20 years and spent over 50 years creating innovative ways to engage people with the natural world at the Lawrence Hall of Science. Larry began his career in K-8 science education in 1966 as a materials designer with the newly funded National Science Foundation Science Curriculum Improvement Study Project. This was the first of many funded projects in which he would play a major role in curriculum development and program implementation. He went on to provide the vision for the Full Option Science System, FOSS, and was the major materials designer, writer, and voice of this highly successful national curriculum project. On October 1st, 2023, the extended FOSS family, along with some of Larry's immediate family, gathered to pay homage to his long and joyous career. While we wished to be able to bring everyone who took the time to write some kind words or tell a story or make a speech, we brought 3 folks together to say just a few words about Larry. Erica Beck Spencer, FOSS curriculum developer and professional development specialist.
So I've known Larry for almost 20 years, and I was lucky enough to work on a project with the Boston Public School System as a teacher leader, and he and Linda DeLucchi would come to different areas of the country when exciting projects were going on, and they would support those projects that ultimately supported the implementation of FOSS. I was then recruited by Larry to work for FOSS. And I never dreamed of being a curriculum developer until Larry said, here's this opportunity to come make an impact on millions of children. And I said, that sounds great. He and Linda and the team at FOSS created products that people really, truly believed in. And they believed in them because people thought these products could change the lives of kids. More importantly, the kids who struggled the most with school, the kids with learning disabilities, the kids with behavior problems, those were the kids who thrived the most in the FOSS science classroom. And, knowing Larry's background, so Larry always used to tell this story. He'd get up on his soapbox and he would talk about how he was not a strong reader. And when he was a kid, at that time, people didn't stop teaching the core, the curriculum of science and social studies and arts when you didn't know how to read. Nowadays, if you're a struggling reader, everybody focuses on reading. And back then, he still was able to show that he was intelligent and he could shine doing science and social studies. And today they don't do that. And so through FOSS, we were able to take the students who struggle the most and give them that place where they could thrive. And I think that's probably his greatest legacy.
Nicole Medina, senior producer at Agile Mind, former FOSS technical project director.
Recently, I was walking through a forested path along some redwoods and thinking about Larry. As a biologist, Larry had an appreciation for nature and wonder. Redwoods are some of the longest living trees in the world, and we're so lucky to be able to walk among these towering giants. When a redwood tree falls, the entire forest hears and feels its impact. It leaves a gaping hole in the forest canopy. The forest is at loss for its giant. But during all these years, the redwood has been busy. It has been dropping pine cones and seeds and even nurturing offshoots at its base. Because of all the work it has done its whole life, there is an opportunity for these new seeds to grow. It may seem impossible to fill the hole left by a titan of the forest, but the seeds of change have already been planted. I think the other thing that I remember about Larry is that we were working together on the revisions of the FOSS project for the next generation science standards. And this was a time when the standards were really new and everyone was trying to figure out what this meant. And there would be a lot of times when we all got really bogged down in the little details and really found ourselves kind of running around in circles. And it was really during these meetings that we relied on Larry's clarity and insight. And he would really make us step back and look at the big picture, usually asking us things like, hey, what are we really trying to accomplish here? Is this really what's going to make our students learn science better? Let's focus on that. And I think that Larry just had a really intuitive sense on how to foster students' growth as well as our growth. And that's why I saw him as a mentor, and I loved working with him and feel so honored to have known such a man in the science world.
Kathy Durana, K-12 Alliance Statewide Director for West Ed.
I first met Larry when I first started working for the Orange County Department of Education. I had spent most of my life as a biology instructor at the community college and was entering K-12 education. And Larry and Linda were working on their Savvy Self programs to try and get science for kids of access for all kinds of kids. And they were doing workshops around the state, and that's the first time I met them. And I was immediately intrigued by their enthusiasm for science, their love and joy of the subject, the idea that all kids should be able to participate in science, that whole importance of access for anybody who wanted to be part of this program. But in reflection, I think about Larry, and I think back to when I was a little girl in science in California, and I still have my science textbook from 4th grade, which was, read about the atom, right? Nothing that was tangible or inquiry-based or anything like that. And I think about what he brought to the science world with his love of inquiry and making materials that made kids want to figure things out. I think he was the epitome of how do you create change in a system with what they came up with, the FOSS program, because it was really the first one that was kit-based and really tried to say, how do we do this for the regular teacher who's not a science expert, and how do we get science into the hands of kids? That revolution that he caused has just continued to grow. Other kit programs came on along the way, but FOSS was always kind of like the grandfather of what that kind of thinking was all about. His legacy is so large. I don't even know how to capture it. When you think about the literally millions of kids that have been involved in FOSS science, not only in America but around the world, and when you realize what he's done in terms of tutoring and mentoring other leaders to become great science leaders on their own account, and what the Hall has been able to do to really be a beacon of science education for all kids. Larry's tenacity, his perseverance, his personality, his bigger-than-life personage just was one of those guys who just, you listened and you said, okay, how do we do this? There's lots of good things we can actually get done. I used to watch him in workshops, and he was like a little kid. He got such joy out of doing the activities with the teachers or with the kids, but you could just see that innate curiosity. It never stopped. He just went on and on with what does this mean, and what can we figure this out? He was a great guy. We will miss him in terms of having him here, walking among us, but the work that he did really has paved the way for millions of teachers to continue to do great science through the work that he did.
With Larry's passing, the science education community lost a passionate advocate for science for all students. In Larry's own words, science is about the natural world, so it is filled with the beautiful, the amazing, the unexpected, the dangerous, the mysterious, and the unknown. There is always a surprise to be pondered and figured out in the natural world, and figuring it out is stimulating. Science is the playground of the mind, the place where students discover things about their environment, their companions, and themselves. It's Time for Science is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lipman and Tom Racine, and is sponsored by School Specialty and FOSS, the full option science system, at the Lawrence Hall of Science, UC Berkeley. Be sure to check out FOSS over on Facebook and Twitter.